and welcome to Gotta Run with Will. I'm Gail Kislevitz, and I will be your host for this segment of the show. My special guest today is Gillian Horovitz. Hello, Gillian.
Hello, Gail.
How are you today?
Good. Thank you for inviting me to your show.
You're welcome. Did you ride your bike here today?
I did, yes.
Gillian is not only a former elite runner, and I'll tell you about her history in a second, but she also rides her bike all over Manhattan. She swims, she golfs, she walks, and she speaks French. Oh mon Dieu, what else does Gillian do? I'm going to tell you what Gillian did. I'm going to read you her running resume, which is quite spectacular. Gillian was ranked 6th woman runner in the world by The Runner magazine in 1980. She came in second to the legendary Greta Weitz in the 1979 New York City Marathon as a young 24-year-old. When that story comes up, I was very impressed when I first heard it, and I asked Gillian, oh my gosh, what was it like to run with Greta? And your response was?
I only saw her at the start line, and then I finished 11 minutes behind her. I did get second place.
It doesn't matter. You got second place to the great Greta Weitz. She ran the Boston Marathon in 1980 in 2:39, finishing third female, and then 4 weeks later won the Paris Marathon in 2:49. Who does that? Throughout her career, she ran 94 marathons with a PR of 2:36 at Grandma's in 1993. Over the course of 27 years, sometimes competing in 10 marathons a year at that high level. Many of them were under 3 hours. She showed brilliant longevity in a highly accomplished career. So, Gillian, let's talk about what got you started in that illustrious career. You told me once during an interview long ago for Marathon and Beyond that you were a tomboy growing up in England. Tell us about that time.
Well, I grew up in England, and I did dancing and swimming as a child when I was about 11 and 12. But one of my best friend, she suggested I try running with her. And we joined a club, and when I joined the club, I just enjoyed it a lot and did lots of different events because we ran the 100 meters, the 200, we did the high jump, the long jump, all those different events, and not all in the same day. But
now, you also told me that your father was a huge influence in you taking up running.
That's right. He'd been a runner himself. Actually, he was mostly we call them football players, but a soccer player. And that was what his main sport was. But he had run, and he had a pair of old leather shoes that he produced out of his closet with spikes in. And he said, well, I think you could wear these. I'll make them a bit smaller. So he made a hole in the back of each side, and he put a bit of wire so that my feet was at the front. And so the first pair of shoes I was using to run sprinting were his old running shoes. And that was mostly because he didn't think that I would stick at it.
Oh.
And so when I seemed to be really enthusiastic, he bought me my own pair of spikes.
Now, did you save those spikes at all?
They may still be in England somewhere, kicking
That's
around.
Right.
Yes.
And then didn't he drive you to your meets and stand in the cold and the rain and that sometimes awful British weather?
What awful British weather.
The one that rains all the time?
Yes. In the cross-country races, we would, every week, we would drive to different parts of southern England, mostly, and he would be there watching. And then he'd have to wait around afterwards because we had to get the results. And yes, he was a very, very enthusiastic and very loyal supporter.
Now, were there a lot of other females running at that time?
In cross-country races and in the track and field races, yes. But in road races, no. I was probably often the only woman in a race, maybe 2 or 3, sometimes a few more. but it was not very popular.
So from the age of 12, you started a running career in a way.
Yes, from age 12, I did races on the track, and I did road relays and cross-country races. But it wasn't until I came to America as an au pair in 1976 that I started doing slightly longer races.
So let's talk about what brought you to actually Philadelphia. Was it the same girlfriend who got you into running?
No, in fact, it was a different, the girlfriend who got me into running, she moved to Cornwall, which is a different part of England. I'm still in touch with her. But it was a different girlfriend who I met at the local club, Kent AC it was called. She, after we both graduated from university, she got a job as an au pair in Philadelphia, and the family who she was staying with, they had a different family friend who also needed an au pair. So that was where I came in, and I came to America, to Philadelphia. So
Was it something that you really wanted to do? Was it an opportunity, or just, why not?
Why not? I think that was more the situation. I applied for jobs in England, and I didn't find something, and then this chance came up to come to America, and so I jumped at it.
So what were you, 18?
No, 21.
Oh, 21.
It was after I got out of college.
Oh, so much older.
Yes.
So you come to Philadelphia, first time stepping down on U.S. soil.
Yes.
And how did you get into running in Philadelphia?
I don't really remember. It's a long time ago. I don't actually remember, but how I started, but in Philadelphia, along the river, along the Schuylkill River.
A lot of runners.
Every weekend there's a race, and so I just started doing those races, and I think I met a couple of other runners who lived in Philadelphia, and so I just started doing this every weekend, every Saturday or Sunday.
Racing or just casual running?
Racing. I was running casually, training every day up and then.
So what were the distances you were racing every weekend?
I think there were 5-mile races, 10K races, maybe 10 miles. And then there was a marathon which appeared, that was at the Penn Relays, that would have been in the springtime.
Was that your first marathon?
Yes. I had arrived on Halloween the previous year. And so I'd been living in Philadelphia for 6 months. And I remember that the week before the Penn Relays Marathon, I went up to Boston to watch the Boston Marathon. We had some friends who were running in it.
Just to see what a marathon was like?
Yes. And I hadn't been to Boston
You had no
either.
idea?
No, I'd never watched a marathon. I mean, I knew the distance. We went up to Boston. We went to the just around.
Walked the Freedom Trail?
Yes.
Did all the tourist things?
Yes, and then we watched the marathon, and then we drove back that night.
So you told me a very funny story about one of the reasons you wanted to run that marathon.
Yes, I had a friend at the time who had a Penn Relays watch, and he had won the watch, and on the dial, instead of the numbers, they had Pennsylvania spelled out, and I thought it was a really cool thing. So I thought, well, I'll enter the Penn Relays Marathon, and then I might, if I'm lucky enough to win, then I'll get this watch.
And what happened?
Well, I won, but they didn't consider the Penn Relays Marathon part of the Penn Relays proper. The Penn Relays watches were if you'd won a Penn Relays event on the track. So
you didn't get the watch.
But I did get involved in marathon running, and I loved it. So
what was your prize? Do you remember?
No, probably a T-shirt. I don't know. I really have no idea what I won. Maybe a trophy.
So wait, we just learned a lot about you in that last sentence. You won your very first marathon with very little training and not really knowing what you were doing.
Well, I mean, I had been training. I've been running, 10 miles a day or something, up to, I think the furthest I'd ever run was 14 miles in training. So it was a little bit scary, uncharted territory when I did my first marathon.
How did you feel?
Well, I was a little worried because I've heard all these things about the wall, and I was worrying about where this wall might happen.
Did you imagine a whole wall that you would have to run
I really
through?
wasn't sure. I thought I was going to get extremely tired, and I was lucky. I seemed to not hit the wall, and I survived.
And you didn't get tired? You felt great after it?
I think so. I felt okay. I managed to look after the little girl the next day.
Oh, that's right. You had to go back to work the next day.
Yes.
You also won some other interesting prizes in the early days of your marathoning. What were they?
Let me think. I won an egg cup. I won
what everybody wants, an egg cup.
I ran the Golden Lay Polytechnic Marathon, which actually started in the grounds of Windsor Castle. And I won that race, and the prize was an egg cup with 2 spaces for 2 eggs for some reason.
Perfect.
I won a necklace. One race that I won, which was a fun prize, was, I can't remember what it was called.
You won a jewelry box. Is that the one you're trying to think
no,
about?
I'm not thinking of that, but I did win a jewelry box in a race in England. No, I'm thinking of the rat race. They had a race that's in New York, and it's not a marathon. It's just a short race. It's about 3 miles, and it used to be you had to dress up in a suit and carry a briefcase, and it was. I think Fred
because
LeBeau
of the rat
started,
race, yes.
Well, he started it because it was the day the tax returns had to be submitted, and so when it was originally started, it was. On the day of the tax returns were due, so April 15th. And so everybody ran in Lower Manhattan, and the surprise of people coming out of work and seeing all these people charging down the street wearing suits and carrying briefcases. And the prize for that was I had a Tiffany watch, which I won.
Oh, you finally got a watch.
Yes.
Perseverance, you got the watch.
Oh, another time I won the Pentathon, which started at Macy's and it ended at the Javits Center. And that was a 5K race as well. And the prize for that race was 2 first-class tickets to go to Paris and a week in a hotel.
For a 5K race?
Yes.
That's amazing.
I ran very fast. I was very determined.
So you got a trip to Paris?
Yes.
That's better than an egg cup.
By then, we had twins, and they were only about 2 years old. So I remember them in the stroller at the start of the race. And so you can't actually have your children in economy, and they're not supposed to be in first class, so they had to make an exception. And so my husband and I, we switched off, and one would have one twin in the first class, and then with the other person would go up there.
Oh, wow. Well, you're getting a little ahead of us.
Okay.
So getting back to how prolific a racer you were, you finished out 1979 after all those other races we just talked about with the Tokyo Marathon in November, coming in second in 2:39. And then you didn't rest. You went on to, a month later, win the Honolulu Marathon. Oh, that was third place. Sorry.
I don't think I won it.
In 2:49. But now in Tokyo,
yes,
is that the marathon that you went over with Nina Cusick and the group of women runners?
Well, I met Nina when I was there. I was going over from England. I think it was before I actually moved to America. And so I was over from London with Joyce Smith and Maria Hartman, who was the head of the women's 3As. And we flew from London to Tokyo. And Nina flew over with the American team from various parts of America. But I met her there, and we became friends.
What was that like? I mean, and what year was that? That was,
I think it was 1979. I think so. Yes, it was quite a very unusual experience just to be in Japan. I'd never been there before. It was the first time they'd held all women's marathon. The Japanese women hadn't run marathons before, and they wanted to encourage the Japanese women to run long distances. And they closed down the roads completely in Tokyo. And the thing I most remember is the sound of the cameras with shutters in those days, and everybody who was lining the streets had paper flags. And they were waving them vigorously. So we just hear this click, 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 and this waving of the flags.
How did the Japanese women do for their first time running?
I don't think that they had invited all the top women from around the world. So the women from Australia and England and Germany and countries like that. Mm-hmm. The Japanese women at that time didn't finish in the top 20, I don't believe. But
they've come a long way.
They have.
Yeah.
It was just the beginning.
Was that your first all-female marathon or race?
I think it was.
Did it feel different?
It did feel different, yes. Because it was a smaller group anyway of us, because it was just the women. Because they had won the Avon Marathon in Waldnil in Germany, which mm-hmm. I didn't do. So it wasn't the first ever all-women's marathon, but it was the first one I took part in, mm-hmm. yes.
One of your dear friends is Tom Derderian, who wrote that amazing book about Boston. And this is what he said about you and your running career. There are very few runners who can post good times for a long time, and Gillian was one of them. He states, she was too laid back to care about the prize. She just loved her running more. Because I know a lot of, maybe you, certainly I, when I look at your career, it just was amazing how many races and marathons you would do. 10, I mean, no serious runner, especially today, would run 10 marathons a year. I mean, they would do one.
I think it was only 1 year when I did 10. I think it was 1980.
The rest were what, 5 or 6?
Yes, probably. So I just really enjoy running.
Two of the best-known runners in the field were 351 Gillian Horovitz, a two-time winner of the Barbados Marathon. 43-year-old Horovitz, who's a citizen of Great Britain living in New York, was the first Masters finisher at the 1995 and 1997 New York City Marathons.
I used to really enjoy traveling, so my idea of pleasure would be to travel to a marathon and run in an interesting place.
Did you ever look back and think, I could have competed faster, better, won more if I had cut back, done more speed workouts, didn't run 5 or 6 a year? Did that ever cross your brain, or wasn't important to you?
No, it wasn't really important. I was also working, so I had a full-time job at the same time.
Wow.
So
your record's even more impressive. All right, so after Philadelphia, I believe you and your friend traveled around America.
Yes, so we both worked for a year with our families, and then we got a Greyhound bus and we just set out, put a big map of America.
Oh, it sounds like a Paul Simon song.
And we just traveled around to the West Coast and down and then across and back up.
And then you went back to England?
Yes.
All right, so we're going to move ahead a couple of years to one of the Boston, no, you were, I believe, in Oregon.
Uh-huh. Oh, yes.
And this is leading up to how you met your husband. Right. You were set up. So tell us what happened. You're in Oregon.
I was running in the OTC marathon, the Oregon Track Club Marathon. And the reason I had gone to that was that I had finished second in a race in England, and I was invited to go out to Oregon to run in the OTC marathon. And I think actually I did a pretty good time. I think I held the British record for a very short time, like 10 days.
A record's a record.
Yes. And while I was there, I was invited by Tom's then wife, Charlotte. This is a long time ago. Why don't I stop in Boston on the way home to London? And so I was able to change my ticket, and I was going to run in the Freedom Trail race, which is a race, I'm not sure if it still exists in Boston. It's about an 8-mile race, and it was happening the following weekend. It used to go around Bunker Hill and finish right, I think, on the Common in Boston, in downtown Boston. So I did.
And what happened? Who did you meet?
So I met Israel, who's now my husband. We went to Durgan Park after the race for lunch with a whole group of us. And I guess they had arranged for Israel to sit next to me.
Yes, I think that it was either Israel or Tom who said, well, let's put it this way. Israel was not there for the lobsters. And then he invited you to come to New York to listen to one of his readings.
Yes.
And did you show up?
Well, no, because it was just before the New York City Marathon, and I'd been invited to come and run in the marathon. And I didn't really think that it was important enough to go to I needed to sleep and rest up for the marathon.
You crushed him.
He survived.
He survived. And he's a runner too, and you did a lot of running together. The Trivia,
the
what was it called?
Trivia Twosome.
Twosome.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was still living in England, and he invited me to be his partner in the Trivia Twosome, which was a 10-mile race.
So what year did you
Central
get
Park.
married?
We got married in 1981.
Oh,
So
all right. So a lot of running
Yes.
still in your life
Yes.
that you accomplished and did. So you get married, you move to the village, and you have twins.
Yes. In 1985, we had Hannah and Oliver. Yes.
And you're still competing. You're still out there running.
Yes.
Yeah. You were
I did my
a
best
killer on
times
the scene.
after they were born. Yes.
So then, in 2007, what happens then? Something.
I actually had to have a hip replacement in April of 2007. And then in December of 2007, I discovered I had ovarian cancer. And so I had an operation to get rid of the cancer.
Not a good year at all.
I just didn't feel right in November, and I went to the doctors, and they did an ultrasound and discovered I had ovarian cancer.
You were very lucky.
I was, yes, because it was quite advanced, but I had a wonderful surgeon.
Stage 4.
Yes.
You can't get more advanced than that.
I had a wonderful surgeon at Sloan Kettering who I'm very grateful that he did such a good job.
That he did a good job. And then I think it was your husband told me that the day after the surgery, you walked 1 mile through the hospital corridor, dragging your IV with you. By day 3, you walked 3 miles in the hospital. And I think your doctors were thinking, yeah, she's going to make it.
But it's very difficult to sleep in a hospital. And so it's much more interesting to not be in your room and to just be, as long as they allow you to take your IV pole and walk around the corridor. It was a good way to
get
survive.
Better.
Yes.
Yeah. So were you able to resume any running after the hip replacement and the cancer surgery?
Yes. After the hip replacement, I think 6 weeks later, I was able to start running again.
Okay.
Yes.
And around that time, you started working at New York Road Runners as a volunteer.
Yes, that's right.
So tell us about your interaction with the kids who have no idea that they're being coached by a very world-famous runner.
Well, I had quite a lot of different schools that I went to over the course of my time working, volunteering and working for the New York Road Runners. But I came to love, my favorite school was PS1 in Chinatown.
We all love PS1.
Yes.
Those kids were just so
They
super.
were just really, really special. I also went to Blessed Sacrament for many years, which is up on just off of Central Park in the 70s. But I think the children at PS1 held the biggest place in my heart because I think running was such an important thing for them because most of them don't even leave Chinatown normally. So for them to come up to a race in Central Park, or if we went up to Van Cortlandt Park for a race, it was just really, really something they wouldn't have done otherwise.
Was language a problem? Was it a barrier?
No, it wasn't. The children always spoke English, and their parents probably didn't. But the children themselves, they spoke English.
What was it about working with the children that touched you?
You'd ask them to do something, and they would.
I would do something if you asked me to do it. I think it was more you.
We had a competition one year to design a T-shirt for the Dragons, it was called, the team. And there was one little girl who turned out she was a very good artist, but she was also very, very shy. And so her drawing was one of the ones that was used in the competition and became the T-shirt that they had. And I realized that she was very shy, and that was one of the reasons she was having trouble running. And so we organized for another child to run with her, and she improved a lot. Mm-hmm. And also, I realized that she improved the most over the course of the year. You know, she didn't end up being the quickest of the children, but she made the biggest improvement.
You have a favorite place to run. I believe it's Gloucester?
Gloucester,
Gloucester. Yes. And there's a race there that's, the trophy is named after you?
Yes, it's on Labor Day. It's 25 kilometers, and it's around Cape Ann, which consists of Gloucester and Rockport. And I ran it many times.
How many times?
I'm actually not sure, probably over 20. And I always thought it was a good preparation for New York.
Uh-huh. Was it the type of thing where all the neighbors would say, here's Gillian, there goes first place?
I don't know. I am not sure. But it's a very difficult hill at the end, a very, very steep hill, which comes at about 25 miles. Mm-hmm. So it's a very tough finish to the race, and it's quite hilly, but it's very beautiful as well.
And the trophy is named after you.
Yes.
What is it?
The Gillian Horovitz trophy, I think it is.
Do you give it out every year?
I do, but last year, for some reason, I wasn't there last year, and they actually didn't have the race last year.
Ooh.
So I hope they're going to have it again this year.
You need to go back.
Yes,
Make sure you need to run it again.
I don't think I'll be able to run it again, but I will be happy to present the prize if it's held again.
Do you do any running at all?
I've actually got really bad arthritis in my ankles at the moment, so I'm currently not able to run. So I'm having to swim and cycle instead.
Well, there's nothing wrong with
that.
that.
Golf.
And play golf.
Yes.
And I hope you're wearing a helmet, because sometimes I did see you without a helmet. I don't like that. You need to wear a helmet and be safe. So this has been a wonderful afternoon spending time with you. And I remember once when I was interviewing your apartment, this gorgeous place in the West Village, and the snow was coming down, and I just sat there and we were drinking so much tea I didn't want to leave. And it was just one of those perfect days. And I said, I think I'll have another cup of tea with Gillian. And that's kind of how you just have that sense about you. It's just very relaxing being with you. It's a lot of fun. You have great stories, such an incredible running history that we need to get out there more. So thank you, Gillian, for being here.
It's very nice to be here talking to you. I have one other thing. You mentioned at the very beginning, after I had done the Boston Marathon when I finished third and ran 2:39, and you said I had won afterwards in Paris. Uh-huh. In fact, the month before I did Boston, I won a marathon in Essonne, France, and it was almost the same time as the Boston time. So I kind of, looking back now, I feel very proud that I was able to do that.
You should feel proud. I don't know who could do that now. Winning 3 marathons in a row, almost one a month.
Well, I didn't win the Boston one. I was third in Boston. But
sorry, third. Well, I hope everyone has enjoyed this conversation, learning more about the wonderful Gillian. I want to thank the Manhattan Neighborhood Network for allowing us to use their space, and certainly thanks to Will Sanchez for allowing me to host and interview the wonderful Gillian. And I hope you've learned something today about what it takes to be a champion, because for Gillian, it was doing what she loved doing, her passion for running, but it was also doing it her way. Thank you, Gillian.
Thank you, Gail.